One last wrap-up video on the first 6 chapters of the Traditions and Encounters World History textbook, The Ancient World up to 500 BCE. I'm going to give you a very superficial overview of human migrations around the world. So humans start in the Rift Valley of Kenya about 90 to 2,000 years ago, and then they migrate out of Africa, and they're in the Middle East by 70,000 years ago, and they're in Asia by 60,000 years ago. And they migrate to New Guinea and Australia, which were connected back then 50,000 years ago. 40,000 years ago, they're in Europe. They mix with the Neanderthals, but the Neanderthals go extinct about 35,000 years ago. And then we get to about 20,000 years ago, humans migrate over the Bering Land Bridge, maybe 20 to 15,000 years ago, into the Americas. 12,000 years ago, they cross the isthmus into South America, up the Darien Gap, and then by about 10,000 years ago, or 8,000 BCE, humans have migrated to every habitable continent. And then the agricultural revolution starts around 8,000 BCE in the Middle East, and you get the first civilizations out here, the River Valley civilizations. Now we get to writing, appears around 3,500 BCE, and our first 2 civilizations are Sumeria and Egypt. And I'm not going to go through the details of each, which was chapters 2 and chapter 3, but I'll just say you got those River Valley civilizations and the Indus Valley civilization over here, right in the same era. Agriculture has started in Mesoamerica, also that's about 4,000 BC versus 8,000 BC when it starts over here. But hold that thought. You got all the River Valley civilizations, and then you got Sargon creates the first empire. We'll get into all that later. I'm not going to go into the details about the empires. We studied that in depth. About 2200 BCE, the Shah dynasty forms in China. That's your 4th River Valley civilization. Now, human movements. While these civilizations are going on, meanwhile, in the Caucasus Mountains, you've got the first major language migrations, the Indo-Europeans, which start to migrate out in about 2000 BCE into Anatolia. Saw them go into Iran. The Harappans are now gone, and you're about 1500 BC, and the Indo-Aryans migrate into the Indus, and then later the Ganges Valley of northern India, and you got the Vedic Age. And then meanwhile, there's other Indo-Europeans heading over here towards Greece and Italy, and eventually the rest of Europe spreading common languages. Meanwhile, down here, you've got the Bantus starting about 1000 BCE and migrating all throughout sub-Saharan Africa, spreading thousands of different language groups as well. I forgot that south of Egypt, you got Kush, which kind of links Egypt with sub-Saharan Africa. You got the Phoenicians trading all in here. Now we're in about the year 1000 BC. What else has happened? The other language group, the Micronesians, have migrated down into Papua New Guinea. That was about 3000 BC, same time as when these 3 River Valley civilizations started to rise. And then not till about 1500 BC, these Micronesians start venturing out into the Pacific Islands. And you got Lapita Society, which rises around 1600 BC, crumbles around 500 BC. We're not going to get into later civilizations that we're talking about in chapter 6, because I'm only trying to get up to 500 BCE, so not much has happened here. You got the Chavan cult here from about 1000 to about 100 BCE, and you got the Olmec culture in the Yucatan Peninsula around modern Veracruz, Mexico, from about 1200 to about 100 BCE. And of course, later you got the Mayans. Now we're in CE and Teotihuacan and all of that, and Chimu, and again, but we're not going to get into all that because that's post 500 BC. So when you get up to 500 BCE, you now have pretty much seen the next empire that we're going to get to is the Persian Empire. So that's a major turning point in world history. So that's all the origins and how humans migrated all around the world. And yeah, I will go a little bit forward. For the Pacific Islands migrations by 700 CE. Over here, that'll be like when the rise of Islam is. That's in the 600s CE. Humans reach New Zealand, the last major inhabitable landmass. But 500s BCE, the Persian Empire rises. They sack Babylon in 539 BC, and that's where our next chapter picks off the beginning of classical empires all through Eurasia. Pumped.